You canceled again, not because you didn't want to go, not exactly, but somewhere between getting the invitation and having to respond to it, something in you already knew the answer. And the relief that came after you sent that text felt almost embarrassing. How good it felt. How immediately the weight lifted. You told yourself it was self-care. You told yourself you're protecting your energy. And maybe you were. But there's a question underneath that you haven't looked at directly yet. The first thing to understand is what your system is actually doing when it pulls back. It isn't being lazy. It isn't being antisocial. It learned something a long time ago, probably, about what happens when you give people access. Something in you registered. Proximity costs something. Presence requires performance. And every interaction, even the small ones, even the ones with people you genuinely like, runs a kind of background process you never asked to install. So the system did what systems do. It optimized. It got very good at identifying which engagements were worth the cost. And then it got good at reducing the ones that weren't. And then, without announcing it, it started reducing all of them. Not dramatically, not in one decision, just gradually. One declined invitation at a time, one rescheduled coffee, one let's catch up soon. That both people quietly knew was never going to happen. The system didn't announce its conclusions. It just acted on them. And you followed along because every individual decision felt reasonable. It was only reasonable. There's a moment you might recognize. You're driving somewhere. A coffee, a dinner, something you actually said yes to. And about halfway there, you start running the math in your head. How long will this take? How much energy will it require? What version of yourself will you have to become to get through it without anyone noticing how much work it is? By the time you park, some part of you is already tired. Not from the day, from the anticipation of what's required to be present in a room with people who expect you to show up as yourself when you're not entirely sure which version of yourself is supposed to show up. Or there's the other one. Someone texts asking how you are. And you look at the message for a moment. You know the answer. You even want to give it. But giving it means opening a door. And opening a door means they might walk through it. And if they walk through it, you'll have to be there when they do. So you type "good busy lately" and close the phone face down on the table and tell yourself you'll respond properly later. Later doesn't come. And when you get home at the end of a day when you manage to keep the door closed, when you finally close your own door and the apartment goes quiet, that exhale isn't just relief. It's the sound of something unclenching that you didn't realize had been clenched the entire time. Not a personality quirk. A nervous system that learned that being known is a liability. The invisible labor here is real. Every interaction carries a kind of overhead most people never notice they're paying. Reading the room, managing your tone, tracking the gap between what you actually feel and what the room can absorb without anyone getting uncomfortable. You're not just having a conversation. You're running a simultaneous translation, converting your interior experience into something that lands right, that doesn't alarm anyone, that performs the version of you people have decided they know. Some people do this occasionally. For you, it runs by default, even with people you love, especially with people you love, because with them, the stakes feel higher. And the reason you feel more exhausted after a dinner with people you genuinely care about than after a full day of working alone isn't because you don't care. It's because caring still requires the translation to run. The quiet of an empty room is the only place the translation turns off. The only place you don't have to decide what to show versus what to hold back. In a room alone, nothing requires calibration. You can just exist without it costing anything. That's not antisocial. That's a person who has never found a room with other people in it that felt as safe as a room without. The deeper question is where that learned, because it didn't start with you, not really. Somewhere earlier, in a house or a classroom or a relationship, your system ran an experiment. It tried being open. It tried letting people see something real and unedited, and something happened. Maybe something small, maybe something that wouldn't even make a story worth telling, but your nervous system noted it, filed it, updated the model. And the updated model said the cost of being seen is higher than the cost of being hidden. So it started building the translation layer, not to deceive anyone, to survive the distance between what you feel and what the room could hold. 10,000 years ago, this was the person who noticed when the energy in the camp shifted, who read the room before anyone else did, who kept their observations quiet until they were certain. They weren't antisocial. They were calibrated. You still are. The calibration just runs in every direction now, including inward. Here's where it gets complicated. The strategy works. Genuinely. Measurably. It works so well that after a while you stop noticing it's a strategy. It becomes the shape of your life, and the shape of your life starts to feel like your personality. I'm just someone who needs a lot of alone time. I'm not really a social person. I recharge better by myself. These things are true, but they started as conclusions your nervous system drew under specific circumstances, and slowly became the entire blueprint. The protection became the structure. The structure became the identity. The identity became the explanation you give yourself for why the world feels best at a comfortable distance. And structures don't announce when they've stopped serving you and started containing you. They just become load-bearing. You stop noticing their walls because they've been walls long enough to feel like home. Think about the people who used to be in your life more regularly. Not the ones you outgrew, the ones you still think about, the ones you still care about, the ones who stopped reaching out, not because they stopped caring, but because you kept not being available until they quietly learned not to try. You didn't reject them. You just kept declining, kept having a quieter night planned, kept needing a little more space before you felt ready. And the ready never quite came. And now the space is enormous, and it's very, very quiet. And sometimes in that quiet, you feel something that isn't peace, but you've been calling it peace because the alternative requires admitting that some of what you've protected yourself from was things you actually wanted. Is this your sanctuary? Or is it the place you retreated to so long ago that you forgot there was a world outside the door? There is a real difference between choosing solitude because it restores you, and defaulting to it because connection started to feel like a threat before it even began. One is a room with a door you control. The other is a room where the lock is on the inside, but your hand isn't on it anymore. It locked itself a long time ago, and you called it preference. The word peace is interesting. We use it for two completely different things and never distinguish between them. There's the peace that comes after difficulty, after effort, after connection that cost something and gave something back. The kind you have to earn by being present for something uncomfortable. And then there's the peace that comes from removing all the variables, from making the world small enough to manage alone. Both feel like peace. Only one of them grows. You're not wrong to need what you need. The quiet is real. The exhaustion of constant performance is real. The nervous system that learned to protect itself was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. None of that is in question. What's in question is whether the protection is still protecting something, or whether it's been so long that you've forgotten what it was protecting. Whether the life you've built around your peace is a life you're actually living, or a very comfortable place to not quite disappear into. If any of this landed somewhere, leave one word in the comments, just one. For the person reading this at 2 a.m., who's been calling it peace for so long, they forgot what the alternative felt like. You built something real here. Something that kept you functional when functioning was hard. Just make sure the door still opens from the inside.